advocate for equity and innovation. First elected to Alberta's Legislative Assembly in 2015 and re-elected in 2019. She has served as the Minister of Culture, Multiculturalism, and the Status of Women, where she has advanced Clara's Law, strengthened the protections against gender based violence, and proclaimed Canada's first Women's Entrepreneurship Day. Right? Her legislative work includes the Health Professions Protecting Women and Girls Amendment Act 2022, a professional musician, now that's interesting, and a long-time community leader. She now holds senior roles in health innovation and business, contributing to inclusive economic growth across Alberta and beyond. With that, let me welcome Mrs. Leela here, and over to you. You can now come on video and unmute yourself also. Why can't I see you? Yes. Can you unmute yourself
I did.
now?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Hemant ji, and thank you, Rishikesh ji, for having me. Following after Mr. Chowdhury Garu is going to be very, very difficult, but I will try my best. Mr. Chowdhury Garu, I go to Hyderabad at least twice a year. I've been in India 8 times in the last 2.5 years, building bridges in global trade and economic development. So hearing about people who are on my side of the world as well too. And I was just in Rajamundry for a water project. So it's so wonderful to connect with people who are in those spaces because it's so important. I just want to say what an honor it is to be here, to be able to open up this platform and to be able to share some of the great work that's been going on. I've been and thank you so much for the beautiful introduction, Hemantji. I'm very grateful for that. I've had the privilege of sitting in a lot of rooms in everywhere from Calgary to Abidjan in Cote d'Ivoire to New Delhi to South India. I actually met Rishikesh ji at an event in Dubai, and very, very grateful that our relationship has continued beyond that very precious moments that we shared together about the future and about what it is that we want to see for global prosperity. What has been really interesting is being around the conference tables where you have sovereign wealth funds in Canada, looking at Indigenous leaders and infrastructure developers. We're trying to figure out, there's a lot of work to figure out trust and to build something together. And here's what I can share with you after being so blessed to be in so many rooms and all of those conversations and all of those miles. The world doesn't change because of policy. And I was going to say, I think Mr. Chowdhury Garu really covered this. It's not about policy changes, and it doesn't change because of a press release. It changes because the right people get into the right room and choose to see each other as partners instead of transactions. And I think that that's why I'm here today. It's not to give you a market update or, a slide deck full of statistics or anything that you'll forget by, 5 minutes after you meet me. It's that to tell you that what I've seen from the insides of those rooms and why the work happening in those rooms or those rural areas or those communities or within specific, age groups, as Mr. Chowdhury had said, the work happening is what matters more than what people actually realize. And when I look at this very, very distinguished group of people that I get to speak amongst, and it is 6:21 in the morning here. I've been speaking with Mr. Ishkesh since 4:30 this morning, so that's how much I love all of you. But that the world doesn't stop for time. This is a global community now, and so if we look at it from that perspective and the global trade, we can see that movement of goods. It's not just a movement of goods, it's a movement of trust and opportunity and genuine human possibilities. And that capital can be more conscious and conscientious. and that innovation can care for both people and the planet. And these are not competing ideologies. These are ideologies that actually need to work in conjunction. And my own journey has moved across continents and sectors from energy to infrastructure in Canada, emerging markets, women's health, longevity, to water and environment and digital infrastructure, and now reshaping everything. And Mr. Chaudhry Gauru, our water project is actually out of Rajamundry, just outside of Kakinada, which is where a lot of my family is actually from. My dad's from Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, so it's very close to my heart. And the lessons that I've learned are anchored in this, is that the most powerful drivers of long-term success are not technology and term sheets. They're full of relationships and intentions. And if I was to look back like on the last 30 years of global trade and, they operated on a certain set of assumptions. And there's a lot of assumptions made about India and Africa and Asia. And all of my assumptions have been blown out of the water. Let me tell you, it's very, very humbling. But the idea that capital was just flowing west to east and that emerging markets are the recipients of investment and not the architects of it, right? And that is, if you look at the African continent, for example, and this is new to me. I've been to Africa twice in the last 4 months, and again, just completely blown away. It was a story, Africa was a story of development as a continent, not an investment thesis, right? And Canada's role was always sort of just to show up and be polite and wait. And those assumptions are really dissolving in real time. And if you look at Africa's combined GDP, it's surpassed $3 trillion. And did you know that they have the largest continental free trade area and a huge free trading zone that is activating? And India, of course, is projected to be like the world's, what is it, the third largest economy within the decade. This is the global south, and it's not rising, it has risen, and now setting the terms. And that's very exciting to be a part of all of that. At the same time, we have a new front line that has merged that I don't think all of us have totally anticipated. And these are the data centers, right? If you look at a single large data center, it can draw as much power as a small city. And these are the kinds of things that keep me up at night, because you think about the significant amount of water cooling that has to happen in regions like we're in Dubai, an area, and UAE, or in India, or in Africa. It requires significant water for cooling, and countries are competing to host them. Regions are branding themselves on AI hubs, and behind every one of those hubs, there's really important questions that come up. So where will the energy come from? Which is a lot of what I work on right now, is getting energy to India, right? So I work in LPG, LNG, crude, sulfur, all of these sorts of things for Indian agriculture, and just to be able to feed this incredible country with the energy that is necessary, and hopefully to help out Mr. Chaudhry Gauru with all of his wonderful opportunities to really help out a class of people that without his help wouldn't have the chances that he's giving them. But you need energy in order for those things to be able to occur. And if we look at the next 5 years, did we know 5 years ago where we were going to be with this energy? We had no idea. We had no idea it was coming. There was probably a small group of people who knew, but most of us did not see this incline of energy and what was going to be necessary to feed the world, and the AI information that will be necessary, and what that's going to look like over the next 50 years. So when I thought about it, the deeper challenge is one we don't always fully acknowledge. And it's not a lack of opportunity, it's a failure of architecture. We don't have the right structures connecting investors to sovereign scale assets. We don't necessarily build trust networks that are bridging governments and private capital across these corridors. And I think really, truly, have we actually made a conceptual leap from bilateral thinking to trilateral and beyond thinking? There's so much opportunity. So that's the gap that I've dedicated my last few years to. And I really believe that you become one of these, you become the working person, those of us who are in these spaces, we become the new dignitaries, the new diplomats, to be able to make these bridges despite the politics and the global politics that are going on in the world right now. Because my work actually lives in those spaces where people and sectors and geographies aren't they're not barriers. We're actually trying to help find the right founders, investors, and customers, and partners find each other across borders. And so I've had the privilege of traveling and listening deeply, and I get to ask questions or say things like, "You two need to meet," or "Your solution belongs in this market," or "Your capital and your vision actually fit together." It's just been so humbling and overwhelming, and I just again feel very blessed to be part of those conversations. And one of the things that really lies deeply with me is being able to connect potentially Canadian infrastructure and energy opportunities with global capital and linking emerging markets and innovators with those strategic customers. So when you bring people together around women's health, longevity, or water resilience, then my role is to help make those connections and help to unlock that next level of impact. So in that role, I've learned a lot, and something essential is that customers don't just buy a product or a service, they're investing in a relationship. And many countries are like that. We're not transactional. We need these moments to be able to learn about each other and have eyeball to eyeball conversations. And they stay with you because they trust your intent, not just the price. They feel invested in you, and not just as a transaction, but as a trusted partner, right? And those projects are rooted in trust and have a shared purpose. And they might take a little bit longer to start, but they're ones and they create real lasting value. That's why I'm here in front of you, because I created a trusting relationship with Rishikeshji, and I get invited to speak all over the world on stages like this one and others across Africa and Asia and Europe and North America. And actually, most of them are willing to pay like a huge speaking fee, but I never ask for that. I'd rather that money be invested into other people being able to come and attend these events that win it. The only thing I ever ask for is, if you can pay my flight and my accommodation, woohoo, we're good to go. But the reason why I do that is because it's not because my time or other people's time isn't valuable. I don't mean to undervalue my capacity, but what I understood a long time ago is that the real return is never in how much you charge to be in the room. It's what you build being in the room. And all of the successes that I've had in my lifetime have been about being in those rooms and the privilege of being there. So I'd rather that 15 or $20,000 that they offer you to speak be actually translated to maybe bring some little girls from, Mr. Chaudhry Garu's group, or to do the unicorns. Those are investments we can actually make in our future, right? So but the introductions that happen after the panel, the coffee. Rishikesh, do you remember where we were standing having coffee after our panel? Like, we had such a great discussion, and then we met afterwards. I'll never forget that. And you took out time out of your day to come and speak with me. I'll be forever grateful for that. And, you'll meet with an investor in a hallway, or a founder, that emails you 3 weeks later because of something that you said that unlocked something in them, or a partnership that takes 2 years to structure, but could change the trajectory of both of the organizations. And none of that shows up on an invoice, but all of it shows up in impact, right? So that's just my philosophy. And it's the same philosophy I bring to every corridor and every platform. And if you don't know me, I get myself involved in all the things. I just have no capacity to say no to things. I want to be involved and I want to participate. And I actually volunteer a minimum of 15 hours a week because I sit on 9 nonprofit boards. And it's not because like I guess I'm a little bit crazy that way for putting that in, but I believe that building those communities is that future, right? And um, it is inseparable from successful business. And I also hold equity positions in 9 companies and sit on the advisory boards of 6 of them. One of them is the project from Arca Biosciences in Rajamundry, or sorry, in Kakinada area. And I'm not saying that as an impressive point. It's not. Lots of people are doing what I'm doing, but to make a point that every one of those started as a relationship, not a contract, but it was a real conversation, and a belief that this person or this idea or the mission was worth the time and effort. It was worth the signature. It was building trust. It was how real value is created, and genuinely and usually in those rooms, exactly like this one, whether it was online or in person. And A lot of people ask me how I how I sustain my level of involvement. I think Mr. Chowdhury, Garu, you probably have to have this conversation about your energy levels because it's just awesome. But I don't think we see that as a cost. I think we see that as the work that needs to be done, and it feeds your soul, right? To keep going, it feeds your karma. You know that these are the things that we should be part of, and they're not obligations sitting alongside of my career. They're the reason my career has so much meaning. So. And so that brings me to some of the work that I'm excited about right now. This summer, actually in Calgary, so that's the city that I live in Alberta, from June 29th to July 5th, we're hosting something called ACABEX, which is Africa, Canada, Asia 2026. And it's a business exchange. And so the conference is actually a deal making platform, but not just deals, but social changes as well too, and it brings together governments and sovereign wealth funds and institutional investors, executives from across 3 continents, to sort of structure these real transactions in energy and infrastructure and agri-food and health and innovation and technology. And Alberta is just an energy center of expertise, and we're emerging as a role in the Pacific Gateway, and it's a very trusted partner globally. You've probably seen our prime minister was put in the top 100 most influential people in the world, and that's only after being in power for just over 100 days. And he's rebuilt relationships with India, thank God, after some of the ridiculous things that have been said by my country. I'm sorry, it wasn't me, but nevertheless, we have to take responsibility for the things that are said. And Mr. Carney has done a great job of rebuilding with Modi ji, so I'm very grateful for that. We also are very, very uniquely positioned to look at Indigenous equity ownership. And this is really important because of our historical pieces that have happened in Canada to make sure that the original First Peoples that were here in our land are participating in that equity position. And if we look at sovereign wealth institutions in Africa and Asia, these Canada has the most powerful ESG de-risking mechanism available. So if you think about it, if we look at proponents from UAE, from India, from Africa, from everybody, they should be investing in infrastructure in Canada because of our energy resources and our ability to be able to feed the world with that. And there hasn't been a lot of conversations around that. That's been sort of my main focus for the last little while. And it signals a permanence and a legitimacy and a community alignment. And it's not soft language. Like, this is investment architecture, right? So, we've got a lot of partners that I can name, but it's not important because you're all my partners now. You're all my family. And in our culture, we say this, that once you come in, you have chai, you sit down, you have a coffee, and you're part of the family. That means that there's a trust there that opens the door for everybody to have that opportunity. And Canada is extraordinarily well positioned to be that partner in energy transition, in clean infrastructure, digital build out, precision health. But we have to show up differently, which is why I'm here, because we have to show equity and ownership as a structural feature, not a footnote. That's a change. It's different. That brings multilateral thinking and not transactional thinking. And trade relationships are so important before the transactions, and that relationship requires these rooms. So, and people often ask me why women's health and longevity and how does that fit into this story about energy corridors and data centers? Well, they're not separate stories. Women are 52% of the population. We are going to be the largest earners and the biggest contributors to the economy within the next 5 to 15 years. So you can't talk about sustainable development without talking about the health of women, who are often, we're the backbones of families, communities, economics, access to preventative care, diagnostic treatments, completely change a woman's trajectory and through her trajectory of her children and the business and the community. So you can't talk about responsible energy and infrastructure or data centers or AI without addressing those things. Or second to that, the one that really keeps me up at night is water. Water's not just another sector, it's life, it's health, food, energy, stability. Data centers will be using a lot of water for their grid modernizations, and the water is actually a stress point depending entirely on how it's designed and where it's placed. This is where we can come in. We have the solutions that are actually made in India. to be able to do this with this incredible product called Chitosan. And we can fix water, we can do water reconciliation, we can clean up the rivers in India and in Africa and in other places, Venezuela, even in Canada. We have many opportunities to actually fix it right now, and it's not that expensive. It just takes a thought process and governments who are really interested in investing in that future. And when we put women's health and water stewardship at the center of our infrastructure decisions, we're not narrowing our focus. We're actually widening it to see the full picture of what that actually means for human flourishing and output. And it's a common thread, and it's long-term thinking, and it takes relationships and courage to design the next generation and not just like the next, quarter and how much money you're going to make. Not that I'm not all over prosperity. Let's have lots, but let's make sure we're putting back into the systems that my country has given me everything. Everything, my province, my country. I wouldn't exist without what Canada has given me. It's my turn to give back now to my country, both my countries, India and Canada, and everybody else who wants to participate. Um, I just wanted to say thank you to the Pitch Expo. Thank you for giving investors structured access to these curated global opportunities. The incredible opportunity to enable these ventures, unbelievable what is possible in that. And I see something a bit deeper, and I'm sorry, Hemant, I see you coming on. I just have two more things that I need to say, and then I'll be out of here. I just want you to think about how you move through this day, listening to the pitches and meeting investors and exploring new ideas. I want to invite you to see this as more than an event, more of like an inflection point. Ask yourself, am I approaching this transaction or as a future partnership, or am I focused only on the deal in front of me? Or am I focused on the difference that I could make in years to come? And I've sat in a lot of these rooms, and I don't say this lightly, that this matters. And even the ones with the biggest budgets and the most famous names on the agenda won't necessarily be the next unicorn, but they might see the next unicorn. So let's see opportunity where some see distance, and let's make sure that we make introductions and see each other and keep up with each other. And let's choose to be relational and build bridges across borders. Because when we do that together, global trade becomes a force for shared prosperity, and our successes become something that we're proud to pass on. And we don't just build good businesses, we can actually help build a better world. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was truly inspirational. So we have heard Hans, we have heard Jay, sir, and we have heard Honorable Leela. And the underlying theme across all the diverse conversations we have had till now is that I mean, I'm sure we have all heard that it takes a village to educate a child or to raise a child, right? It does take an entire ecosystem to bring about change which is fundamental, change which is at grassroots level, and change which is also global, right? These are the conversations which span that entire length and breadth of something at local level and grassroots level, but the impact being very, very international. So absolutely great to hear that. And of course, you talked about conversations over chai. So in India, we say that chai pe charcha. A lot gets